Welcome to Awakening Soul Divinity, your sacred space for deep healing and transformation. Listen to inspiring conversations with healing experts, spiritual guides, and teachers as we explore ancient wisdom, modern healing, and powerful stories of change. I'll also share practical insights from my personal journey, from spiritual crisis to inner purpose. Whether you're seeking to overcome anxiety, embrace your true nature, or awaken your higher self, this podcast offers guidance to help you transform your life and elevate collective consciousness.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Nick Santanasasso here, global keynote speaker and entrepreneur. Now listen, I've had the privilege to train and work with many speakers over the past 7 years. And one of the greatest experiences that I've got to see is Michael Rosenberg and his evolution in communication, his evolution in facilitation, and most importantly, his evolution in transformation. Lives are going to be changed, awareness is going to be expanded, and breakthroughs are going to happen. Michael, so proud of you, brother, and I can't wait to see all the lives you change with this program you put together. Get in the room, my friends.
Hey everyone, I'm Rena, and welcome to Awakening Soul Divinity. And today I'd like to welcome also with me, Michael Rosenberg. I am so excited that you decided to join me in this journey. So thank you for being here, Michael.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline, for having me on. I was excited and honored when you approached me, so I knew it was going to be a good time.
Yes, I think so too, especially after the conversation we had before we even came on here. So I agree.
Yeah, we could talk for days. We know that, but we'll get in what we can.
Right, exactly. We'll try to contain ourselves.
Sure.
So I'd like to start out with if you could tell us if you've had like a significant personal trauma that became the catalyst for your healing and the catalyst for the work that you do, or if there was something else that was that catalyst. But if there was a trauma, I'd love for you to share what that is, because sometimes it helps people to see or hear somebody that's gone through something similar to them, so they know that they can not be afraid to go on down this road on this journey as well. So what do you?
Of course. Yeah. Well, my journey is really about emerging from a corporate environment that wasn't serving me and living a life that wasn't true to me, kind of really getting lost in that for a long time, many years before I ventured out to really find myself and create my new life. But as I looked back, quite recently, actually, I realized that a lot of this began with something that happened to me in high school, which has to do with high school football. As a kid, I was very passionate about football. It was my favorite thing in the world. It was really me just on the field with my friends in the park, and I was good. I was super fast. Touchdown after touchdown. I was one of the best ones out there, and it was like all I wanted to do every day, all day. And when I got to high school, I asked my parents if I could go out for the team, and it was challenging. They thought I was going to get hurt. I was a very small guy. So my high school football story kind of looked like the movie Rudy. I was this small, undersized guy with a big heart that had to work really hard to get to the starting lineup. And it was my dream to catch a touchdown under Friday Night Lights. And by senior year, I finally made it to the starting lineup. They named me starting wide receiver. And what happened was I ended up dropping the passes that were thrown to me. They would just hit me in the hands or the chest, bounce off me in front of the big crowd under the lights. I'd walk back to the sideline with my hands over my helmet, my head down, just wanting to crawl into a dark hole and not be seen. And I essentially felt that I dropped the ball in life. Like I let myself down. I had my dreams in my hands that I had dreamed about my whole life getting to this point, and I dropped the ball, and the pressure became too great for me. And I knew that I was better than that, but I couldn't handle the pressure at the time, and I was benched and replaced. And that's the way that my high school football career ended. Now, it's interesting because I used to look at trauma and say, well, I didn't think I had these big traumas that a lot of people had, like, abuse or someone dying or like really severe depression young. But I realized eventually that it's all relative and unique to us. And for me, it was a huge trauma because it shut my heart down. I just went into my room, like wouldn't come out. My parents were worried about me. I beat myself up, and it continued on that way for a long time. I just put so much pressure on myself from that moment because I couldn't handle the pressure in the big moment. Now I
Yeah.
was able to link this to the rest of my journey, and I saw like, oh, no wonder I called in all of these high pressure work environments like in sales, and I put so much pressure on myself to perform for so many years and was just miserable. And I was continuing this unhealed pattern from being a young kid, not feeling good enough, feeling like he let himself down.
Right, right. And that's for those viewers who are watching, I've experienced others who have had trauma, and I've studied this around that, where there's not just macro traumas, because it also, that what I found, especially for myself, is that depending on how sensitive you are, a micro trauma could cause just as much damage and trauma as a macro trauma, because it's not necessarily based off of the experience. It's based off of the feelings and how you take them in and how hard you take them in. And, for something like, for example, my son, when we went through a whole bunch of the things that we did until he got older, he kept saying, you know, or he knew that there was an abandonment issue, and I did too. And I kept thinking it was because of what we went through later on in life. And he's like, no, 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 no. It had nothing to do with that. His abandonment issue came from, and I've mentioned this before, but it was the day that I dropped him off at daycare. I had just gotten a job. He's 6 years old. I couldn't take him to work, right? And I drop him off at daycare, and I hugged him, and I told him how much I love him and how great he was going to do and all that. And said I would be back later. In what I mean, a 6-year-old doesn't really have an understanding of time. So I said I'd be back later to pick him up. And I couldn't tell him how long it was going to be because he wouldn't have understood that anyway. And as soon as I turn my back and walk out that door, there's his abandonment issue. And that is considered a micro trauma, but it was enough to really create that sense of loss and sense of, fear in him, where he felt like he was abandoned. So yeah, I mean, I just wanted to clarify that, when we go through things like that, when you went through that with the football team, and what happened with you, your feelings were still the same. You still felt not good enough, right?
Yeah.
People can feel not good enough for a whole bunch of different reasons. And that was yours. And from that, I'd like to hear your story a little bit more about the way you described it for me when we talked offline about your experience with that job that you had that created so much of the trauma, and maybe what the catalyst, because there was a catalyst in there too, a big one, which made you go off in this direction, because the direction that you went off in is the one that I really, really get excited about, because he went traveling and, diving deep into himself and doing his healing work and all that. So that I would like to hear a little bit about that for you to share, if you're up to doing that.
Sure. Let's see if I could remember which experience, because when I look at my professional career, it was kind of the whole thing that was a little traumatic for many years. And it was like one thing after another that all carried a similar theme.
Well,
Uh,
what theme then? What stood out for you as that theme that really pushed you to saying, "I'm done. I'm out."
Yeah, yeah. Well, like most people, I kind of went through the traditional path of high school, college, pick a major, try to get a job, that's going to be secure and set me up and get promoted and all that stuff. And, somehow I'll find happiness and fulfillment through making a lot of money and chasing that.
Mhm.
Uh, and I never really knew what I wanted to do when I grew up. Like that was kind of like my phrase. So when I went into the professional world,
Figured that out 2 months ago.
what's that? Oh, yeah, yeah. I still say it.
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that
So
out.
I'm still trying to figure it out as well. Right. Exactly. I think a lot of us are.
Yeah.
And, I just went into the sales world because I didn't know what else to do with myself. Like I majored in English just because I could get out in 4 years. I didn't want to do anything with it. But I started my professional career out in Los Angeles, looking to become a I went out to work for talent agents. I secretly wanted to be an actor. I didn't tell anyone that. And I thought if I could just get close enough to the actors and, yeah, like represent them, that
Yeah.
maybe somehow I'd find some joy in that. And I started working for just these ruthless, cutthroat people in that business. Maybe this is one thing I had mentioned, but like kind of the culmination of the 2 years I spent there, I worked for this one very famous music manager who represented some of the biggest names in the business. And I got destroyed. I mean, in a month, I ended up walking out with a panic attack and quitting on the spot at lunch. I'd be kept in the office till midnight. I wasn't treated humanely. I was just expendable, and the pressure was enormous when you're working for someone of this stature. And so it was just like constant. I was an assistant. I was doing all the duties, but like doing all their middleman stuff and managing their business. It was just so overwhelming. And sometimes I compare it to the movie Devil Wears Prada, like the crazy thing that boss had her assistant do, you know? And for me, it was, he'd say like, all right, record this whole conversation and go and type it out. And I'd spend like hours and hours doing it. And he'd come out and be like, I don't need it, and just walk away, like just devalued. I'd show up to his driveway, and I couldn't go into the driveway because my car wasn't new enough. I might get oil stains on his driveway. It was very cliche Beverly Hills. That's where I was working, kind
Wow.
of stuff. Now, I went into sales after that career, and I spent 11 years in sales. And if I could sum up that experience, it was a very performance driven industry, meaning it was always like, what have you done for me today? What have you sold for me today? And if you weren't hitting your numbers or selling a good amount, your company was disappointed in you, your boss was disappointed in you. I used to say, like, to myself, that there would be this ongoing joke that if you didn't sell something by Friday, you'd be on suicide watch, like you're going to jump off the cliff, because there was this pressure to perform. And
Mhm.
this is where I could link it back to football, this pressure to perform. And ultimately, it just deteriorated my health. I never felt I was good enough at sales. I was working harder than ever, banging my head against the wall. It was never enough money. I would never hit the marks that I could make. And when I did sell something, I'd be rewarded. Life was good for like a day or two. And then I go out to the weekend, spend all my money at the bar drinking, trying to forget things, and come back Monday starting over like, oh man, I can't believe I have to do this again. And after a while, the whole thing felt kind of inauthentic to me too. And that, I think that had to do with a lot of just the corporate environment and the agendas and the incentives. And I felt like I was in like Groundhog Day, and I was like, how am I ever going to get out of this? I feel like I'm trapped in this life that is making me miserable, depressed, burnt out, and reliant on medication. And so through 11 years, what happened is the pressure just kept boiling and boiling and boiling. And eventually, 2015, I began to have a spiritual awakening that took me to, let's say, 2019, 2020, where I eventually took this leap to go traveling. But it was like all of the pressure and things that didn't align were building on one end, while on the other side, I started building spiritual practice and investigating myself, and like really becoming passionate, reigniting passion again about this self journey,
Yeah.
until that started to outweigh the pressure side of the corporate work part. And I was like, I'm ready to jump.
And yeah, that's an interesting because even in that spiritual awakening, that also opens up a whole new can of worms. Did that
Oh yeah.
happen for you?
Yeah, yeah, big time, big time. It was wild what was happening. Like, I started with a trip to India in 2015, just to want to take a spiritual trip by myself. And from that point on, it's like God just started to pour it. I didn't even know what God was. I was like, do I believe in God? Do I believe in a higher power? I have no idea. But it was like a breadcrumb trail started to be laid out in my life. And it was like leading me to one thing, to the next, to the next. And my indicator of where I should go was just, am I excited about this? Am I interested? Do I want to check this out? It was like feeling based. And so it led me to different energy modalities like Reiki and breath work and um, transformational programs like gratitude training that I did with friends, and plant medicine. It's like each thing started to open me and soothe my nervous system a bit. and bring in new information that taught me that I can be passionate and excited about life again. And what I found is the more I focused on doing the internal work and working with my shadow aspects and evolving myself and becoming passionate about that, my body started to get lighter. My mind started to get lighter. I started to stop putting so much importance on what I thought was important, which was like money and goals and sales. And I just started to enjoy myself again. And what started to happen in that process is sales began to just fall in my lap. I actually worked half as hard. And by time I left that career in 2020, I was the number one sales rep on my team. And I had never achieved that before. I worked half as much and stuff was just falling out of the sky. I was making money. And I even had this moment, I was like, damn, should I stay in this for a little longer? Could I do good at this? And I was like, no, 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 Mike, your journey's been leading you to something else. So that's when I went traveling.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love traveling, and as you have been doing this journey over the past 4 years, I watched you from when you started out in Cusco, and we actually talked the following year in the spring, and I was kind of coming up into that space at that time, so I wasn't even ready for anything yet, and uh, we had a great conversation at that point that kind of pushed me forward. And again, like the spiritual awakening, every single time you get a little nudge forward, for me, it was like forward, down, up,
Yeah.
forward, down, up, forward, going. And it was like, but you inspired me with the fact that you were traveling and you were doing it later in life, maybe not as late in life as I'm at, and that's okay. But but the fact that you were doing it was so inspiring to me. And then when you started doing videos and sharing it, it just reminded me of me, because that's what I've always wanted to do, something like that. And it's still possible, I do want to say something though here again. What I'm recognizing is I've had a few men come on the show that I've interviewed, and what really also inspires me is the fact that if you look out in the world right now, there's so many women that are going through their healing journeys. And wherever you go, if you join a group or whatever, there's generally more women than men, not always, but generally. And what is really powerful for me is the fact that with programming from, we're pretty close in generations, but not exactly. But I'm sure I'm sure you've had similar, thing. The kind of programming you got about how to be a man and how to, which led you into the job that you did, and you have to make money and you have to provide for so and your whoever, and all of that stuff, all that programming creates a space of being torn, like from my perception, in two, because you're being told I've got to be a man, I've got to be a man. And then on this side, it's like, but I can't have feelings and I can't, I'm not allowed to do this and I'm not allowed. And for you to take this healing journey, I say this to every man in my life that I know that is doing something similar as you are. And that's brave, because in this world, you're not moving into that toxic male ideology that's out there in many cases, and you're following your heart, which a lot of men generally follow point A to point B right here, left side, to create their lives, and then a lot of men are, challenged with that, who want to shift it, but they don't know how. Before I get into the next question, can you kind of give these men some understanding of how to create that shift? Because
Yes.
it's not the easiest thing in the world. Tell them, man.
Yeah. It's certainly not the easiest thing in the world. Like any way that we're conditioned to try to unlearn some of that and reprogram ourselves takes time and commitment. Um, for me, I actually believe that most of my spiritual awakening early on was the awakening and emerging of my feminine energy. And we all have feminine and masculine energy equal. It's not, as you know, a male or a female thing. But yes, most men were raised to be tough, to hold it together, to be the providers, to look like we got it all together. And the masculine energy and the masculine mind is in doership and figuring things out and calculating and strategy and steps and effort, while the feminine energy is more of the spiritual, creative energy, the emotional energy, the allowance of flowing, the receivership of life, and all of that. And I didn't even know this until it just kind of started to happen naturally. So it was really, I have to say, the women that came into my life that taught me how to embrace my feminine side. And a lot of men also are scared of like homosexuality, and they think when they hear the word femininity or feminine energy that that means like, oh, I could be a gay or something, and it's just simply not the truth. So what happened is like these women mentors and just women became really good friends of mine out of nowhere. I thought it was, yeah, so strange that like I had a hard time making a romantic relationship work, yet I had all these like female best friends.
Totally
Um,
the opposite.
yeah, it's like I think we get what we need and we get to embrace what's being presented to us if it's, helping in some sort of way. So beginning to let down some of that masculine energy, holding it all together. I can attest to this because it's this constant pressure. You and I talked about it on our last call. I always felt this need to be the provider, and that if I wasn't, like I was not enough, right? So if when we, as a man, when we start to tap into our emotions is really where I feel that it begins. Honoring our emotions, taking time in solitude. This is why meditation and breath work are so important. And going into nature is so important because nature holds our natural frequency as humans, and it starts to help us let down those protective layers and those different areas that are tight within us and soften and begin to feel our heart again. So it's this journey from the head to the heart. Most men are stuck in their mind trying to figure it all out. As a man, if you can start to realize, hey, I actually don't need to figure it all out. Actually, there is this creative potential, spiritual life force power within me, all around me, in the world that is working with me, through me, whatever you want to call it, God, universe, spirit, your heart, whatever it is, this energy is undeniable and it is opening our heart if we allow it. So as men, like I found that going in and just feeling my emotions, allowing them to emerge. I spent like 2 years crying, like on my Reiki master's table as she was opening energy within me, just purging, and I didn't even know where it was coming from. It
Yep.
was all sorts of sadness and grief. And as men, as all of us, but as men too, like especially, we carry an ancestral lineage and collective energy of this like toughness, this hardness of like holding it all together. So find activities too that help you soften. Start to become curious and playful about things that you can have fun with, that you would enjoy, that you don't necessarily have to make money with. And it's really comes down to like doing more that feeds your spirit rather than what depletes your spirit. And I think as guys, we're so focused on like, how do I make money all the time and what's the plan? Because that's going to give me stature and make me look good. And a woman would want me because of that. It's actually not true. A woman desires a man who is open-hearted, who is in touch with his emotions, which is actually a harder thing to do. A man who can create a safe space for a woman to emerge in her feminine space.
Wonderful to hear
And
this. Keep going.
yeah, and so like that requires us going in and doing the inner work. And most men confuse it. They say, well, actually, I am tough because I go out every day and I provide and I make money and I do all these things that are hard. But most of them are afraid to look at their true feelings, their emotions, or the parts of themselves maybe that they don't like or the difficulties that they have. That's actually the hard part. That's the part that takes like oof, some real bravery to go into, right? But
Absolutely.
when you open that up and just simply by spending time with it, then your heart begins to open and you begin to cultivate an energy that's always been within you, that's been waiting to kind of come out. And that's what starts to attract more of a like a whole holistic blend of life to you,
Mhm.
if you
Mhm.
will.
But that is feminine. That is the feminine energy, the energy of attracting and receiving rather than pushing in action is
Mhm.
the difference between the two. Thank you for that. That was amazing.
Well, I want to just say, I love what you just said about pushing in action. Like, I think you just summed it up because we think that we have to constantly push to
Mhm.
make it happen. When really, like, God, source, spirit, feminine energy is saying, no, no, no. You need to receive. We're actually going to create it for you. If you
Yep.
allow it in, it could be the past path of least resistance, much more simpler and much more beautiful than you ever imagined by not doing it all yourself. But most men have it backwards.
Well, and interestingly, you say that. Very interesting that you say that because most men have it backwards and a lot of women have it backwards because I can vouch
Mhm.
for that. I joined the army to make my dad proud of me. That's a very masculine place to be, right? All these things, it took me until 2017 or somewhere around there that I actually connected with my feminine side. So I'm going to say women out there who are real, masculine oriented, it's okay to do that, but it's the same goes for you too. If you're working on connecting with your feminine side, everything that he said is exactly the same as we get to do too. And I have done those processes because I was constantly trying to control. I was always, I was taught action oriented. That's what you get trained in. That's in the military, especially. It's like go after whatever your end game is or your target or whatever. And it took me years to get out of that space because that's all I knew. And it's interesting because I feel that's why I can feel that recognition when you say those things because I've had to do the same thing, which is interesting to me, which is why I get excited when I hear you saying what you're saying too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We're
go ahead. Go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, like, yeah, like we're all working through this quote unquote unbalance, whichever side you're on, whichever energy you got more of. But I feel that, and it's just what's coming up as I'm listening to you, is that so the masculine side is just as important, like the action and the taking the control and the accountability is super important. But I feel that without the balance of the feminine energy, without that aspect, that the aim of the action is usually off. It's usually based off of like some void that we need to fulfill, like to be enough or something, like always trying to prove ourselves and control things, just like you said. When the feminine is balanced and you're coming from love and purpose, then the action can become aligned with those values and it's much more potent.
Potent and powerful. I like the
Yeah.
word powerful because it
Yeah.
gives women the power that we feel that we don't have when we balance it. And it gives men the feeling that they can be who they are, as a human when you balance it. That's
Mhm.
kind of how I see it. Does that resonate with you when I say that?
Yeah. Yeah. Us women and men are always working directly with each other to help each other balance each other out for sure.
It's all part of the process, the mirror neurons. Yay, mirror neurons.
100%.
Right. So on that note, I'm going to ask this question to me is important, and we kind of talked a little bit about this. Let's see if we can either go in that direction or find a really cool new direction to go in with this. But
Cool.
how do you see the changes and what's happening in the world now related to why we need to heal our nervous systems?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, if you look at the world right now, I think if you were to ask what most people like, hey, what's the state of the world? Most your common person will tell you like it's horrible and it's falling apart and we're doomed.
Mhm.
Uh, and I would say that like a lot of that perspective comes from being so tied into the outer world through news media, through our programming, through the opinions of others, the pressures and expectations of others. And I think we're coming to a head with that, to like a culmination where the pressure's starting to break. That way wasn't working. And within that way, there's a million ways, right? Like all the systems and all the things, and you see how I feel utterly ridiculous politics is. I think politics can be great, but I'm just calling it what it is today. So many people are caught up in sides and blue and red and more caught up in being right as opposed to like coming together and working for a solution or being kind or being accepting of each other, right? So I see more of this misbalance with this kind of like overemphasis on this masculine energy, right? You see it a lot in our leaders. Our leaders, I feel like, are a lot of hurt little, boys who kind of grow up as men and then that kind
Sorry
of,
on that one. That's a whole.
yeah, it's a whole nother rabbit hole, but it's like the reasoning behind, this kind of patriarchy, if you will, and how wars are formed. But let me not like go off on a tangent. I think when I see people in general so caught up in everything outside of themselves, they cannot connect with themselves within. People are so convinced that the solutions to society and the world exist in politics and in who's right or wrong and in getting more people on your side. And that will never, ever, ever work. What's
But when
happening?
you
Yeah.
yourself, correct? It's
What's
outside
that?
because it's outside of yourself. Because
Yeah.
right?
Because it's outside of yourself and because reality is literally just a direct reflection of what's going on within us.
That's what
And
I.
so most of the collective energy of humanity is in a frenzy. And
Mhm.
that's what they see in their outer reality because they're in a frenzy on the inside and they're caught up in like anger and what this person said and what that person said. Most people are not taking a close look within themselves and
Mhm.
asking, how can I heal myself? How can I feel better? If you notice, like probably you and I run in some of the same circles, you run into more of the people who are doing the inner work, who are a bit more aligned spiritually with themselves. They're having a much better experience of life. They're enjoying themselves more and they're a little more tuned into like what's actually important versus like all the chaos. So, if more people would start, most people think it's like airy fairy BS, like, oh, I got to heal myself and I'll heal the world. Yeah, literally, that's how it works. Be the change you want to see in the world, as opposed to just getting caught up and making a lot of noise on stuff that you don't even know what's happening out there anyway.
Yeah, yeah. And the challenge with that though is that's also part of the programming because most of us don't know to do that. And when you finally get to the point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired,
hmm
and something's kicking you in the butt, and if you're willing to be kicked, so you can heal and move forward and soften and be that change, it's challenging for that to happen. And then some people, there's also the blinders. There are people that are putting blinders up. And the truth about all of this is that we are all similar. We all have the opportunity to do this. It's not specialized just with one or two people, with Michael and myself, with the gurus out there. It isn't. This is there for all of us. What was the I probably shouldn't bring it up because I don't understand this piece of it, but there's
Okay.
a portion in the Bible that Jesus says about finding the kingdom within.
Mm.
And I was raised Jewish. Okay, so I didn't actually start reading the full Bible until I was in my, I don't know, mid 20s, late 20s. So I didn't know any of this stuff. People are, they look at Jesus as the Christ.
hmm
And if that's what he's saying, then that's what I feel like Michael is talking about. That's what we're doing. By looking for the kingdom within, we are
Yeah.
bringing it without.
Yeah. We're yeah, we're playing our part.
Yeah.
Like we all have a purpose and a part of building this kingdom on earth, but
Yes.
it's not going to come from something external or somebody coming reincarnated to take care of it for us. If we literally create the kingdom of heaven
Yeah.
within us,
Yeah.
that is the highest service that we can provide to humanity and this
Absolutely.
earth and to God. Period.
Period. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this brings me to my next question, which that led right into it. Thank you so much for that segue. how does all that relate to our awakening? What's going on in the world right now?
Mm. Can you repeat that question? How does it relate to our awakening?
And along with everything that's going on in the world, because that piece right there that you just said
Ah,
has to do with our awakening. And because we call this awakening soul divinity,
yeah,
that's the question for you.
got it, got it. Yeah. Well, creating the kingdom within and going within, which could look a lot of different ways. There's not this 1, 2, 3 step process, but should you choose to go on this path, you will begin to awaken to the true essence of who you are, to the essence that your soul has brought to this earth within your human body, within your physical vessel. And our souls have all of the wisdom that exists, everything that we need for ourselves, for others, how to make this world a better place. And it happens naturally. Like, we don't know what we don't know. So most of the world is just trying to predict and create everything from the same mindset that created the problem, right? So awakening is when like this mm, energy begins to awaken within you, this aspect of God that is going to reveal to you different perspectives and ways of going about things and aspects of yourself that you couldn't even see, that you can never predict from your mind. And it only happens by going into the heart and by going into ourselves and beginning to heal and rest and play and create and all of that. So I think that there's a massive awakening happening on the planet right now.
Mhm.
I think we're seeing a lot of structures crumble and a lot of division and a lot of what looks like the end of times, because this shell that has been, this energy that has been around humanity of pushing and forcing and trying to do the same thing over without it working is beginning to crumble. And that usually happens through traumatic experiences, because those are the nudges that nudge us to say, as you said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like,
Mhm.
we don't decide that on our own unless something like kicks our ass or puts us a little bit in that direction. So on a collective level, like, humanity is experiencing really traumatic things happening to push them more inward, like to go inward, because they're not going to have a choice after a while. So
Mhm.
you either like start to get with the program and start to learn by investigating and finding mentors and whatever, like how to kind of go inward and create your own kingdom, or you stay stuck in a society that is crumbling in a sense. You can go down with the ship with it if you want. It's really, though, an invitation for us to shift to love.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you, Michael. And to add to that, something, a couple of things that you said I picked up on. It's like about predicting the outcome when you're going through your process. Again, I'm going to share my experience. For me, it was like when I was stuck in it, when I was dissociating and I was dysregulated and I was in that trauma all the time, you can't predict an outcome. But what's interesting is that when you start to do the work, it becomes organic. It's like that
Mhm.
outcome just starts to appear. It's not like, this is what I planned and this is what had to happen. It's more
Yeah.
like, I've been thinking about this and oh my gosh, it's showing up. So that turns out to be the outcome. And the outcome isn't necessarily the end all be all, because this is a journey. So there's always going to be a new outcome. There is no end. We can look at the house we might want, or we can look at the relationship we might want, or we can look at all these different things. It's still going to change. It's not going to being open to what is coming is more healing than, trust me on this one, than holding on for dear life to protect myself or whoever else does this, to make sure everything stays the same, because nothing stays the same. Even in our bodies, every 30 days, every 90 days, whatever it is, our cells change. Everything is constantly changing. So we can't keep it the same. Or we can't go back to doing it the old way or whatever, because everything is moving forward. And then what it also is doing is, with all these things that you mentioned that are going on in the world, it is actually bringing an opportunity. It's bringing the darkness out into the light so we can see what's been going on, what's happening. Because a lot of people, a lot of us, including me, close myself into the box because I don't want to see what's going on. I'm just going to sit here and go, okay, and once we see that darkness, it's like, again, I don't want to experience that darkness. I rather experience the light. And that's what pushed me into doing my work. And it's going to lead me to my next question for you. I love how this is all working. So,
Sure, sure.
why is healing self and surrendering so important in this process?
Well, I think you just described it a lot of what you were just saying is, to this not gripping onto an outcome and just allowing the constant unfolding of it all, because this is what nature does. Nature's constantly growing and changing, like the hair on our heads. Our hair doesn't stop growing, it's going to keep growing. It has to regenerate. Same thing with nature, and you have cycles of rebirth and death, and this is the way it's supposed to be. And when you were describing that before, I got this image of like a balloon being blown up with air, but somebody like holding on to the outside of it, trying to not let it get any bigger. So it was like, yes, but of course, like you're going to evolve anyway. Like growth is happening, but if you're hanging on, trying to control it and staying the same, you're going to feel this like pressure that wants to burst inside of you because we're literally fighting our own evolution. And so the healing journey and allowing it to unfold is going to reveal the next step and the next step and the next step towards love, right? Like most people, we're all the same. Like most of us, we want to experience more peace. We want to experience more love, more fulfillment, more enjoyment, more excitement, more calm in our nervous system, right?
Right. Yeah.
Our original essence, holds all that, contains all that. We have it as babies, right? And then the conditioning all happens on top of that. So it's this journey back to that, but we're not supposed to know what it's supposed to look like. I mean, that would ruin the surprise. Like if you were like, all right, I'm going to heal and I'm going to do this, this, and this so that I get to this and then feel like that would take all the magic out of it. And by time you got there, it wouldn't be what you thought it would be. It's the same as if I get more money, if I get the promotion, if I find love in a relationship, whatever it is, then, I'll be complete as a human being. What happens? You get there and you're like, there's still something off. There's still something missing
Yeah.
inside. So when you look at things from a God perspective, right? God, however you want to describe God or creator, all the energy, that's flowing through us, creating us, there's eons, there's infinite intelligence and wisdom through that source that's emerging through us that we're not supposed to know in our minds. So the more that you heal, I kind of see it as almost like a reward system. I don't like to put it that way, but it's like the more like each time you kind of do some work on yourself or like put a drop of love like into your bucket, treat yourself well, like go into kind of the hard thing, like really, really make an effort. I always find that something pops up in our experience that is enjoyable, that's something that we asked for, that like feels good, that's more aligned with who we truly are. So the healing journey reveals who you are. You're
Mhm.
not supposed to know that. That would take the journey out of the journey, and there'd be no point to us being on this planet. And this takes a lot of trust because most people have fear of the unknown or fear of like losing our identity in all of this. And that is exactly how the game is set up. It's like it's going to take some fear and some discomfort to go into it, do the best that you can, love yourself as much as you can through it. And on the other side of that is going to be this blooming flower that's going to bring surprises into your life and magic into your life that you never saw coming, that you will say, thank God I didn't know. Thank God I had to feel the contrast and go through that darkness first so I could appreciate and understand the value of the light that's coming in now.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it fits in. So the picture I got into my head when you were saying that was the butterfly coming out of the chrysalis, because
Mm.
exactly the process that we go through. There's always, like, you go through so much pain giving birth to a child. You wouldn't know specifically, but I'm sure you have an understanding of that. The pain leads to an end state, which is the most amazing thing you can ever imagine. And that's exactly what is happening when we are doing our healing work on our journey, is that we
Oof.
come to the end state. We don't know it. When you're in the middle of giving birth, you're like, ouch, it's very painful. But when you get to the end and they put that baby in your arms, you, I don't remember the pain, so that's what I think that's really cool about that kind of thing. But that's life. That's the journey to me.
I've never heard that analogy, and it's so obvious. Like, I appreciate you saying that because, but of course, right? I mean, I don't know that pain, but I would imagine it's like one of the highest pains you can feel, and then you have new life on
Yeah.
the other side of it. And like, even with the butterfly and the chrysalis, they say that as the butterfly is right being created from the caterpillar, and the caterpillar is like emerging, it has to struggle to get out of that cocoon, and it struggles big time. They say that if you try to help it along, you will interfere with that process and it will die, and that it must go through the struggle to become the butterfly. And
Mhm.
it is just as necessary for each human in the same process.
And interestingly enough, when you were talking about nature, which this is what nature is feminine. Nature is allowing that process to happen and not fighting it. And here I am, I've been fighting it my whole life, and I finally realized not to fight it. And it's such a different place to be when you don't fight, and you just allow this stuff to happen. I can't, I mean, if we had had this conversation a year ago, I would not be saying this because I was still fighting it.
Well, I'm curious, like what was your experience when you were fighting it? Like, what were your results? What did you get out of that?
Not, I crashed in on myself. I isolated. I didn't want to have anything to do with anybody because I was scared of just being out there. No, I felt very alone. I felt very, and not, no, I'm sorry. I felt very lonely. I'm okay being alone now, now, but the lonely part, I felt like no one was there to help me or rescue me. Now let's throw in the fact that I really at first didn't ask, but when I finally did, then that happened as well. So it was like this, I'm not good enough for people to help me. I'm not good enough for people to be in my life. I'm going to isolate. I stay back. I'm done, So, last year I went into a deep depression for about 10 days and I slept for about 20 hours a day
Wow.
because it was so challenging. And what was interesting is I also knew at the same time that this was a dark night of the soul. And I kept getting these little keep going, keep going. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. So that was painful. It was horrible. I mean, in that moment, it was horrible. But when I got to the other side of that, completely different. Everything shifted. Everything started falling into place. Everything that I wanted to happen, the outcomes that I had always wanted to happen, started happening. But it was because I got to the point where I allowed things, I surrendered to things that I was resisting so hard.
Mm.
And when I finally started surrendering, that's when things started showing up for me. Yeah, it was, thanks for asking that question. Who's the,
Sure.
who's the interviewer here?
Well, it's a dialogue. I feel like we're
Okay,
creating a
all right,
lot, but like
okay.
you even brought me back to that surrendering again, because like I don't know if I had like clearly answered that, but I think like in surrendering too, there's so much we don't want to let in because of whatever fear, or we see it as something different than what it actually is. So like it takes letting in some things that we think are one way that end up being something that we never imagined that, could work out in our favor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I want to ask you a question. I know that you are an empath. I'm not sure if we talked about you being highly sensitive, but I'd like you to, if you can, with all the stuff that goes on with the healing journey, can you give some kind of strategies that you've used on your journey that might be able to assist like highly sensitive people or empaths on their journey? Because sometimes they come to the table with like, I don't know what direction to go in. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck, that kind of thing. Do you have any
Mhm.
strategies that you've used, a couple of strategies you've used to help yourself get through that, not out of it, through it? There's no out.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I think we're all empaths in one sense or another. Some of us are more sensitive. For me, what I started to realize over the years is I was taking on a lot of people's energy unknowingly.
Mhm.
And I would constantly feel weighed down, sad, lethargic, like I was always struggling, overwhelmed. And it turned out that a lot of it was me, but a lot of it was also the people around me. It was co-creation. And we are sponges. We are energetically sensitive human beings who, for the most part, don't know our power and our capabilities. We're always absorbing everything from our atmosphere and from different people around us.
Right.
And, for me in my journey, it wasn't until I really began to get quiet with myself and to take some space from myself, from toxic environments, to back away from the stimulation, from the constant doing, from the electronics, going to nature more and spending time just to walk and enjoy and be quiet. And really being quiet and sitting with ourselves is typically one of the hardest things to do if you don't have any practice doing it. So it takes time, but if you're willing, it makes it able. And practices like meditation, like breath work. Someone who I am more sensitive. So I find that when I go out, I get thrown off very easily. I get distracted and I lose my focus if there's too much stimulation around me. So I got to get up first thing in the morning and spend some time with some breath work, meditating. Sometimes I need to journal just to get some things off of my mind. And these days, it's about eating clean. It's about really limiting even, eliminating, the vices and things like alcohol throws my body way off. I've always loved to smoke cannabis. That's been my thing, but even that puts disconnects me from myself and my world around me. Like everything we put in our body through our six senses is affecting us. Even the music we listen to, the movies that we watch, the people. If you got people who are always complaining and downers around you, you start to take that stuff on. Also, sexual energy. Like I've had a long journey, which could be a whole nother podcast probably about a recovery from pornography addiction and about coming back to my true power and essence and understanding the importance of this power, and that when I mix my energy sexually with anybody, I'm taking on who that person is, right? A lot of their qualities, their emotions. So, I could go on and on about this, but when you start to understand that everything in you, you're being created from all the things around you, and you start to just simply a step at a time come to this practice of tuning in, of grounding yourself before you go out somewhere, or even coming into an interview like this. I'll sit for 5 minutes and think about, all right, what's my intention? How do I want this to go? Putting an intention before everything. There's many tools, but as you can see, it all comes back to focusing within yourself and being still.
Yes, right. Then I totally get that because, like you mentioned, probably all of the ones I do. So, and I'd like to throw in stop watching the news because they're not even telling.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Can you share with us, based off of everything we've talked about, kind of give an idea of the work that you do and the direction that it's going in? Because I don't know if we went into that when I asked you about the trauma that led into the work. But I'd love you to share the kind of work that you're going towards right now to guide people in life.
Yeah. I help people reconnect with their true self and get back in touch with their intuition, with their personal power, and start to gain clarity about what they want for themselves and their life and how they want it to look. I think almost all of us, well, all of us at some point go through some kind of journey that begins with not us. It's like doing all the things that society or the world or that our parents or that our friends or anybody else expect us. We start taking a path that we think we should take. And then we end up with this should energy all over ourselves, which is just more pressure and it's inauthentic. Like this is what closes our hearts.
Yep.
And heart is really the true guidance system of our body. It's actually like the true brain. It has more wisdom. The brain is more the computer that works in coherence with the heart.
Mhm.
So in one sense, I help people move from the mind to the heart to tap back into the innate wisdom that they have within them. You literally have everything that you need inside of you. Most of the time, you just can't hear it, feel it, sense it, or believe it because you've never been taught or shown how to do that. But I believe we really each have our own roadmap and navigation system that will bring us to that. And it's going to look different for everyone. So
Mhm.
there's really not this like one way to meet yourself and discover who you are. I think that would make it boring again, and it would just be like another system in society. So the way that I work people is like I hold space for them and I ask them the right powerful questions to have them find their own answers and express their own truth. And maybe like a lot of people I work with don't have people in their lives who understand them, who create a safe space so that they can speak their truth or their true opinions. They might have fear of what others will think or judgment, as we all do. So the kind of space I hold like allows you to be yourself and discover more of who you are. And then you get to make your own choices of which direction to take next. And within that work, there's work we do around reprogramming beliefs, around finding passions, around finding out like what your specific intuitive abilities are. Like you get to actually take the steering wheel. And I do this all through one-on-one coaching and through speaking, through transformational speaking. And that career with the speaking, I'm just beginning. So I'm looking for stages and places to go to inspire people through storytelling. And I also work with people through storytelling because we all have a very powerful story to share. Most of us are carrying a story that's maybe not so inspirational, or it is, but we don't see it in that light. We see it as like some bad thing that happened to us. So through the power of sharing your story and storytelling, I help people rewrite their stories and also choose the story that they want to tell themselves now, because
Mhm.
we're creating ourselves in every moment. So you can keep telling the story of the past, or you can start telling the story of how your past shaped you and move forward.
Wow, that's I love that because that's the reason why I started the podcast, which leads into the community to bring out, like you and I do very, very, very similar things. And you're using every word that I've ever used for the most part, give or take a couple of them. But that's why we get together, because to me, as healers or empaths, or it doesn't really matter what you do in the world, you're still connecting with people. But when you come together with people and you're all doing this work together in a community, there's so much, it's exponentially bigger in the process. So it's like when you, another here, I'm gonna, where two or more are gathered, you know, it makes it bigger. It's bigger. So we're all
Bigger kingdom within, right?
kingdom within, right? And it's like we're all trying so desperately to do our work and get out there. We're doing it by ourselves, and we're not, and we're doing it as the best job that we can. But if we come together, wouldn't it be a whole lot more powerful, big, helpful? That's
Totally.
odd.
Totally. What did your life look like? What did you get out of fighting in that time? Like constantly fighting and not allowing or surrendering. You said that you isolated a lot and you felt alone. And there you have the point of community, when we are like joining powers collectively. And I find also it's like counterintuitive. So often we want to just like be alone when we're going through a hard time, but it's actually like through service and interacting with others that helps like raise that life force energy out of us and helps us come alive again. And so I know that even when I'm alone trying to do things for too long, I get into a rut, and I can go do those same things around some people who are also up to the same things and have my best interests at hand, and we all want each other to succeed and we're helping each other. There is this added energy of inspiration, of safety, and of momentum that comes with that in a community.
Yeah, and that's exactly, I mean, just doing these interviews, because that's my intention, is to bring people like you out into the world where we all can accumulate and come
Yeah.
together and do this stuff. And it does, you're right. It does bring out that safety. It brings out, like the energy, the excitement. When I hear you say something exactly like I've been saying it, it's like, oh God, there's somebody out there who gets me,
Yeah.
So that's that like that does it. That's the one. Okay,
What
go ahead.
what you just said, I just got touched on what you said because that is so important. You were like, somebody gets me.
Mm,
And I think all of us experience this, like, especially if you're going on this awakening journey or doing the inner work, like, you need people who understand you so
mhm.
that you can feel safe enough to come out and express. Because I can't tell you how many times I have coached people, I've worked with people, talked to people in just conversations like this, and they've said something and been like, God, I've wanted to say that forever. But I thought people would think that I'm crazy if I started
Right.
talking about this like spiritual stuff or stuff that I feel. And I'm like, oh, please, like I love this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
So we need more of that.
Yeah, and interestingly, on the other side of the coin, from my experience, it's like when I talk to someone who is on it, who's like-minded or resonates with me, I get it's easy to do that. But when I was trying to share the same thoughts and things that came into my head with people that did not resonate with me, that actually made things worse for me because I didn't think there was anybody out there who understood me, who got me. So it made things harder in the healing process until I did find people who were willing and understood and whatever, and they're like this, they're like, come on, it's okay, we're not gonna drop you, versus my experience with people who are like, I'm going through this thing and I really could use your support. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, sorry, I don't have the capacity to help you or to even
Mm,
support you, and that was really, really challenging for me. But now it's a whole different ball game. I mean, now when I reach out, if I need anything now, well, actually things aren't like they were before, so it's a different kind of reach out. But just having that in my space, in my life, is so, I don't even know what word to use. It's just beautiful. I mean, it's like, I love this. It's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I mean, that's really the best way I can explain it. So,
mm.
uh, yeah. All right. Well, I have a few questions that I ask everybody that I've been doing these conversations with.
Okay.
And the first one is, what does awakening, and I know we talked about this already, but this is like a direct, what does awakening mean to you at this time on the planet?
Mm. It's a good questioning because awakening is such a loaded topic, depending on how you look on it. Yeah. Awakening, the first word that comes to my mind, well, two words, is awareness and love.
Mm,
Those are the two minds that come to mind. We are beings of love naturally, but we forget. And life can be very challenging, could be very hard. We could forget who we are in that, and then we can start making a lot of actions and decisions, from that place.
mhm,
So awakening is an awareness that brings us back to the love of who we are,
mhm.
individually and collectively.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's from that place that we can create a new world and a new self.
I love that. That's awesome. That's so awesome. So then that leads into, what is soul divinity to you?
Soul divinity.
I have to throw in the title in here. Soul.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Soul divinity. Let's see. I feel this as like almost like a birthright of every soul that exists that comes into existence in a physical form. I mean, we have it not in a physical form, but like it's the birthright of knowing our divinity that our soul carries, the connectedness to all that is the magnificence, the power, the magnitude that we are, that we get to remember, that we don't have to do anything to be. It exists within us. It just is. It just is. And, like I reflect on my own story of this, like pushing and trying and striving to be so big and to find my self-worth. And our soul carries a divinity that is much bigger than all of that. And the path there is easier than we think. It's a remembering and an uncovering process.
Yes, and I got another. We keep getting these downloads, pictures.
Okay.
When you said that, I pictured a little kid, and they know, probably a 4 or 5 year old little, especially a boy. That's what popped into my head. Look how big I am. Have you ever seen a kid do that? I'm big,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
They know.
yeah,
We get to know it too because it hasn't gone away. It's our soul. And I think that's a good visual to remember that just because we've been kind of squashed with all the stuff, the programming and all the rest of that stuff that's been going on, it's not the truth. That's not the truth of who we are. We are big, and he is right.
yeah. It's like that drop in the ocean analogy, right? Like if you're a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean
Mhm.
also.
Yeah.
You are the stars. You're made from it.
Yes, absolutely.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Okay, so the next question is, what is God or source?
Ooh, big in the big questions today, man. All right. My first thought about this is you can't put a word to it. There's many words, and I have found myself challenged with this over time, trying to put a word to this. I'll try to describe it, right? It's the energy of existence. It's all that is. It's what in this moment and in every moment is creating and speaking through you and I and all of the objects and nature and people and everything around us. Sometimes I call it God, sometimes I call it universe, sometimes I call it creator, sometimes I reference just my heart. We have the God right within. Now, I see it as though the highest power that is, and that we tend to get in our own ways and kind of block it with our minds and trying to control things. But in this, yes, in this like allowance and this trust in faith, we can feel this power more tangibly within us and feel the magic and the guidance of it, which is going to be beyond anything that we have ever imagined. And for me, it's fun. It's playful. It feels amazing to know that I have this like team that I can't even see
Yeah.
behind my back that's leading me on this journey of adventure and remembrance. And I'll also say, look, everyone's going to view it different.
Mhm.
And I've even myself, like I've had people question me and say like, I don't know if like your relationship with God is what it could be because I hear you say it in this word and like humans, especially in religion, I feel like have this need to know and to define everything and to put it in a box. You cannot put God in a box. There's no need to define it. It is literally woven into the very fabric of who we are. We are it.
Yes, yes, yes. And it's interesting, the Native Americans call that God source the great mystery.
The great mystery. Thank you. That's another one of the phrases I just love
Yeah,
because it's supposed to be a mystery.
yeah.
It's so big, you're not supposed to know what it is
I think
exactly.
because we're the humans that we are, and we feel like we need control, that we need control over that too, to
Yeah.
understand it. And we don't allow ourselves to just let it be or let ourselves be, you know.
Yeah.
And when you were getting ready to answer the question, you just said, "Woo," and I was like, "Woo, doggies." Okay, that's
I
good.
love to talk about this stuff. I could talk about it all day. And yeah.
Okay, good luck because I got one more for you.
Okay, okay, hit me.
What is unconditional love?
Unconditional love
Uh,
is true acceptance at a very deep level. Acceptance of ourselves and acceptance of others and acceptance of the divine plan. Acceptance of even the horrible, seemingly horrible things that happen because our human mind wants to put titles and make meaning of everything. And deep acceptance is knowing that there's a massive divine plan that has it all figured out, that's always in effect. And sometimes things have to look unpleasant, or as humans would define as bad, in order to give way to something else, to birth something else, to evolve in the way that it needs to. Unconditional love, yeah, with that acceptance, it's like we do it with each other. That's the best way that we can do it, is with ourselves and with each other. And the last thing I'll add on that, like one easy way to look at that is look at your relationships and the people that you love. Are you loving them only when they behave in a way that you feel is acceptable or align with who you are? Do you shun them? Do you cast them out of your life? Do you scorn them when they don't behave that way? Unconditional love is, I love you no matter how you are. It doesn't mean that I need to it doesn't mean I don't have boundaries. It doesn't mean I have to agree with you or everything, but I honor and love you as a divine soul, as a human, as someone that I want well for, just like I want well for myself.
Wow, that's beautiful. Oh my gosh, I don't know. Okay, I'm trying to take all this in because you've got some good stuff you're talking about. And then the one thing that you said about the divine presence, even though we've been told differently through religion and that sort of thing, the divine presence still does love us in a bigger way than we can ever imagine. And for us to be able to remember that is kind of challenging sometimes, but it's there.
Yeah. I believe the divine presence is love at its source. But I
Mhm.
feel like humans, because we want to control and define everything, often define love as something that feels good and is pretty and, looks how it should look in our perspective. But
Right.
like there's tough love too, right? Do you ever like really need to like love someone a little hard and kind of like call them out and let them know where they're not being their best selves, where, they are perhaps acting in a way that is disrespectful? Like that is love too, because you're helping them along. You are holding them
Mhm.
um, to their highest standard, even when they don't see it, right?
Right.
So, like for me, divine love is doing the same thing. And even when we mess up, even when we get down on ourselves, that source energy within us is still like loving the hell out of us. And it's like, I got you. Like, keep going, keep going. You got it. It's love. It wants the best for us.
And if we could figure that out and not run away from someone who is creating a tough love environment or whatever, that would be really, that would be a good thing. But we don't even know how to do that. So,
Yeah, yeah, we're all learning that one, myself included. Yes.
awakening. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, that should do this part of it. The last question, or no, first, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah. So the best way to get in touch with me is on my website, which is wakeupwithmike.com. There is a place where you can contact me on there and either send me a direct message or book a free 30-minute discovery call with me to find out if the coaching is right for you, or to send an inquiry with a question or a speaking inquiry if you'd like to have me, speak at your event. On Instagram, Wake Up with Mike. I put a lot of videos there. I'm a video guy. I got Facebook, TikTok, same thing, but those are the best ways.
Okay. And this information will be in the description, just so
Okay.
too. And also, last but not least, if I can get to the question, is there anything else that you'd like to add or share with our viewers before we go?
Hmm. Let's see here. You are right where you should be.
Mhm.
Nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. It's a matter of perspective. Remember that love is all around you, that you are never alone, that there are forces that you can't see that are championing you along, that are holding your hand. There are people out there who understand you, who are open, who are loving and accepting and want to help you. And every challenge that you're going through is giving birth to a greater version of you. And it's going to be beautiful when you get to meet that version of yourself.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank
Thanks.
you, Michael. I appreciate you so much. And thank you, everybody, for being here on Awakening Soul Divinity podcast. And take care, everyone. Have a beautiful day wherever you are or night. And we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thanks.